At that point, we were not able to fire back at all.
Mm-hmm.
We were really pinned down.
Totally pinned down, yeah.
That agitated me. It really started to get to me.
Yeah.
I remember yelling, "We got to fire back! We got to fire back!"
Yeah.
And
it's hard actually for me to remember that because it was such an intense moment that like thinking about it stresses me out, and the chain of events became so intense. Like, you know, the intensity of the moment with the bullets and the explosions being so constant that it's like getting shaken up and reset, where like your brain is just like, whoa, in a constant state of shock, you know. And I remember getting knocked down by the concussion from the rockets at some point and getting up and being like, what the fuck, you know, like I could die here, like I might die here right now. And I remember thinking that, but yeah, you were shouting like, we need to fight or we need to move. We can't just stay here and take this. But then whenever we would try to take an angle on the window, they would see us and they were right there. So I think they were on all three sides of us with like teams of like, you know, 3 to 5. So I think there was like 15 enemies shooting at us all together from like 3 or 4 different positions. And right then I was trying to think about it and like, you know, like, okay, what do? I need to shoot, move, and communicate. And I think I said that at some point, but whenever I try to move, you know, and then it was hard to communicate because the constant rockets and the loudness of the incoming fire was intense. And then the Vice News guys started to panic. And I remember one moment that like I was really proud of myself because at that point I wasn't thinking consciously anymore. I'm just like moving and like trying to like run on instinct. And I was also thinking like, you know, I don't want to give a bad opinion, give like a bad like, you know, order. I'm not in the leadership position. I don't want to be giving orders. I'm just going to, you know, do what I'm told. And thinking like I'm just going to follow my orders helped me to like focus on moving in action and ignore the panic of like being trapped there. And I remember thinking like, I don't care if I die here, but I want to protect the journalists and I don't want to be captured. Like more than dying, I didn't want to be captured. So around that time, I was like, well, this sniper rifle feels useless when I'm stuck inside if they storm the building, but I have grenades. So I took out a grenade and I took out my knife and I had a grenade in one hand and a knife in the other. And I used the knife to like loosen up the pin for the grenade. And I was like holding the knife here and the grenade here with my finger through the ring. And I looked up and the camera guy was looking at me and recording. And I noticed he was recording, but he was looking really pale. Like, oh shit, we're about to have like, it's about to turn into a knife fight with grenades. And I just smiled at him and I was like, yeah, man, it's that kind of fight now. Like, and then I turned and looked at the door and I was staring at the door thinking like, okay, you know, I'm going to throw this grenade downstairs. And then Enrique and Carker ran downstairs and I was like, all right, so I put away the grenade because I couldn't do that. And then, let's see.
See, this is because I don't remember that. I didn't see you doing that, and you know, you told it the story of getting your grenade out and your knife out, and then the guy filming you with the camera, and you were sort of telling it in a funny way. So it was a good addition to sort of my recollections of the events. Because I mean, like I said,
if you were in the other room.
And there was that, and that's what I was going to ask you, because there was this...
you and Soro were over there.
That's right, and we were there with the journalists, 2 of them, and some of the Cassaday guys.
But the cameraman was on the stairwell with me.
And this is when I was saying, I remember for like a second time saying, we can't just stay here, we have to fire back, or we have to evacuate. And it looked like we couldn't evacuate.
Yeah, we felt trapped.
And then... somebody said, well, let's jump off the balcony.
And we all considered it for a while.
I remember, and then I looked at it and I came back and I said, no, you can't jump off there. It's 4 meters off the ground. I said, you're just going to break a leg and you're going to get stuck. And then somebody said, well, chuck blankets and stuff to land on. And we actually, it was just, I remember the chaos of it. Yeah. And Sorrow had gone out onto the balcony and I said, that guy has to start shooting back. We can't.
I remember that.
We can't just sit here and take fire.
Yeah.
And I went out and yelled at the guy, and as soon as the guy stuck his head up, he took fire. So
he did shoot a few rounds. He got up and he fired, and then he got shot at and he got back down. Yeah. And I think I saw them run away, and I was like, oh man.
And that was, to me, was like, geez. And then I started to look at the Noctis, because when we got out onto that balcony, you could see, and we couldn't see anyone. So that's when we thought, oh, they've left. Okay, Haval Haki needs to deal with that. Can you, he's not here. You have to be careful with that.
Yeah, that is an unexploded bomb.
Yeah. You need to take that actually and put it, where can they put that? You should actually not be holding that.
Huh?
You shouldn't touch
should not
that.
be carrying that around. That's an unexploded bomb.
Yeah.
Okay. See,
But we put fire, it's not.
Yeah, I understand, but we don't know how volatile it is.
Yeah.
So put it in a place away from the Nocta. Can we put it? No, cows go down there.
Well, we could put it back in the trash pit without food.
Can you put it down there and go get Havalash tea? Can you take that down there? Just put the bomb down there. That's it.
It's fast.
Yeah, run.
Yeah, no, don't run. That's probably going to have to be buried.
You're brave, man.
Well, you could blow it up with something else. Yeah, he's brave, but he brought it right over. I'm like, oh. But, not the metal.
Yeah, no.
Just in the dirt. Like, because
Just by the dirt.
That's a bunch of shrapnel.
Put it in the dirt. Carefully. Just there. Put it there. Let go. There. Yeah. Oh, Jesus. That's it. Can you go tell Havalash tea? Tamam. Okay, great. Thank you. And that was it. And I remember, and that was the point to me that seemed the most intense, because there was real anger. Because I remember the anger of,
like, we're still here. Why aren't you, like, fighting? Like, where are you guys?
all of this. It was sort of, we were angry at them, and I remember Sora really yelling aggressively, like, we're taking this fire. We need to be able to have someone on those supporting those Noctas either side to lay down some fire on them so we can get into firing positions. And understandably, it was intense, and they were taking intense fire. And it looked then, when it looked like they had left, it became. I think Sorrow was really good in that moment, because we said, and Enrique had come up and he says, "There's a door at the back which had been covered with sheet metal," and that was a mistake on our part. We hadn't checked out the building properly the night before.
Yeah.
But
well, and before we all went downstairs, I think before he went out into the back door and they started talking about the jumping off the second floor, there was one part where I was like proud of myself because I didn't think about it and I just did it, where I saw the camera guy in the central hallway of the second floor, and I was like, whoa, don't stand there. And I saw bullets hitting the wall above him, and I was like, somebody outside can see him. And I grabbed him and I was like, here, get behind me. And I put him behind me on the stairs, and I was like, stay behind me, and he was freaking out, like, well, what are we going to do if they come in the building? And I was like, I'm not going to let anything happen to you, man. I'm going to protect you. Nothing's going to happen to you. I'm going to take care of you. We're going to get you out of here and you're going to be all right. And he was like, okay, thank you. And I had my hand on him, like, behind me so I could tell where he was. And I was like, oh, this is some hero shit, And I was like, wow. And
this is it. Can I just say, because at that time when you were, you had your grenade out, and I didn't know that you had done that, but it reminded me of what you just said earlier about the American soldiers have an expression of, this is where you want to be or something.
Yeah, this is the one you want.
And I had this experience, and it reminded me.
You asked for this.
There was a thing. Oh, did I say this?
No. I'm thinking, like, you asked for this. Like, that's what I think about when I think that saying.
Oh, that's exactly what I thought.
Oh, yeah.
I thought to myself, because we were stuck in this situation of somebody was not doing their leadership role, and that, and then that was really frustrating, and then it looked like we couldn't evacuate, so we were not in a position to fire back, we were not in a position to evacuate. And I thought, it really occurred to me at that moment, I thought, geez, we're going to die here. It's more likely that we're going to die here than survive. And then this experience came over me, like it was almost like I was standing behind myself, put my hand on my own shoulder, and said to myself, "This is what you wanted." And it was a way of saying to myself, "Hang on."
They're playing with this bomb.
Has he lit that?
No, Ashti took it over there,
Oh,
to the right. He took it down to the valley.
Maybe we are going to burn it.
okay, that's fine. Oh, that's why he's excited. Righto. You look delighted. Look at
I
you.
thought you were running away like you would just lit the fuse. But, yeah, so we,
And then, but the thing that occurred to me was, you can cope with this.
yeah.
You know, you can.
Like, there's still choices to make. Like, you still have options.
And that really helped me. And it was only minutes later when we were in that room and the journalists were saying, okay, what do we do in the panic? And then Sorrow took charge and he just said to me, and Enrique had come up and said, there's a door at the back. And then Sorrow just pointed to me and he just said, lead them out, lead them out.
Yeah.
Still, there was all that confusion. But
And I
please
kept
continue.
asking, like, well, what are we going to do? Are we going to stay and fight? Are we running? Are we taking the journalists out of here? You know, like, what's the plan? You know, and I remember I kept saying, like, what's the plan? What's the orders? You know, like, tell me what to do. I need to do something. And, you know, he wasn't talking and he was just like standing there thinking, and we're like, And so you and Sorrow led the way and we went downstairs.
But do you, sorry to interrupt, and I want to continue from there, but I mean, not mentioning anyone's name, but do you remember it was the yelling?
After that was about what I was going to get to.
Okay, carry on.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so we went downstairs and then he like woke up, you know, like as we were going downstairs and we were like, okay, we're going. He's like, what are you doing? And we're like, we're leaving. We're taking the news crew away and we're going to bring them to safety and then we'll come back and fight. And he's like, no, I'm not leaving. You can leave. You know, he got all crazy.
And screaming.
Yeah, and he just like lost it and started yelling and screaming. And we're like, you know, chill out. That's not helping. And around that time you told me, or you or Toro told me, see that pile of rubble. You get to that pile, turn and face the enemy and cover us from there. And I'm taking the journalists. He's like, okay, go. And I said, okay, I got it. And I ran there and I hit the pile and there were still bullets flying right there. And I was like, ooh. So I climbed up to the top of the pile. I crawled up and they were asking like, do you have us covered? And I was like, not yet, because I couldn't see anything. So I got to the top of the pile and then I moved to the side of it a little bit to have more cover. And I started aiming from there and I was like, okay, now I got you covered. And I still couldn't see any enemies, but I was shooting, you know, windows, and then they ran.
Was that when the mortar hit and we used the
Yeah,
smoke?
yeah, and I was like, you know, there was the boom, and I was like, okay, go, go, go now. And they all started moving, and then I waited to hear like, okay, we're set, and then I got up and ran back, and then we started to leapfrog, and Carker and Enrique stayed in the building, and we're still started shooting finally at the enemy.
No.
At that point they were still just like hiding, like holding up in the.
Yeah, he hadn't started shooting.
Okay, so they were still taking cover in the building. And we ran, and there were bullets coming down the alley, down the street towards us, and like crisscrossing from either side of the building. Like the enemy had gone to the left and right and were like shooting from angles, and we ran back, took them back, and we're leapfrogging back. And we got to the Nocta where the friends were, and we were shouting like, don't shoot, it's friends. And we came in, and they were like, come inside, come inside. And we were like, yeah, okay. You know, catch breath, like, you guys stay here and we're going to go back. We can't just leave our friends there. And the reporters were like, don't leave us with these guys. Like, you know, like, we don't really trust them. You seem more professional. And I was like, well, technically these guys have been at war longer than I have. This is my first war. Like, they have more experience. And they were like, we don't believe that. And I just smiled like, well, maybe I have better training than they do, but they have more experience than I do. And they were like, we don't believe that. Don't leave us here. Don't leave us here. And I was like, man, you know, like, I can't leave my friends out there. And you and Sorrow and I got together and we were like, well, what do we do? We're like, well, let's get back to Carker and like help. And so we talked to the Vice News guys and we were like, you're safe here. And they were like arguing like, no, you know, get us out of here. And we're like, okay, we will, but first we need to go get Carker and bring him back here at least.
Yeah.
So the three of us ran back. During that conversation, I stuck my head out into the alley, and the Quesade were like, no, 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 don't do that. And while I was looking out, sniper fire came down, and I was like, okay. So I thought, like, I need to get to a position where I can shoot this sniper. So I went, like, behind the building, and I laid down behind the building, and I crawled back towards the street. And there was, like, some rubble there, and I was behind the rubble, and I leaned out from behind the rubble. I could see the silhouette of the sniper on the roof that was across the street from our old building position where Carker and Enrique still were. And as soon as I saw him and I turned the crosshairs towards him, 3 bullets came right past me, getting closer with each one, hitting the ground and the wall behind me. And I rolled back to the left, away from the fire, and like bullets were hitting right where I had just been. And I was like looking at the dust, and I was like, okay, I can't go right there. So I came back into the building, and I ran upstairs, and you guys were still talking. And I was like, maybe I can shoot from upstairs. And I ran upstairs, and the Quesade guys were like, no, 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 it's not safe. And I'm like, well, fuck you, get out of my way. And I got up there, and I could see Carker on the 3rd floor. And he was like, come back, come back. And I was like, okay, we're coming back. And I was like, but can you come to us? And he was like, no, you come to me. And I was like, all right. And I couldn't see the enemy. I could just see, because our old building was 3 stories and tall. And I could see him on the 3rd floor. And I could see that he was running around up there. And I was like, what's he doing? And I was like, oh, he's probably looking for ammo. And I think at that point he had started shooting, because I could hear, like, you know, gunfire. And it was a loud explosion. And I think an airstrike hit right outside there, right outside of our building, and drove back the enemy a little bit.
On.
No?
You've condensed 2 separate events.
Oh, okay, that was after?
That was because then we had ran up. I'd gone back into the building, been there for a while, came back. Then we had a similar discussion again, and I said, he's not clear in his head.
Huh? I think so. There's like a little cup of it over there, the old diesel. Yeah. Yeah, there's no more big drum. But, okay,
so the
yeah,
airstrike hit after.
The second time?
Yeah, and then I think that's when he had started shooting.
Okay.
Because when we went back the first time.
The 3 of us went back,
yeah,
and we were leapfrogging building to building, and you had made it all the way back into the building, and we were going to run one at a time. You went, and then gunfire came from the left and right side, and me and Soro couldn't move forward. And then they shifted positions, and they started to shoot at the doorway we were standing in, and they were hitting outside the doorway. We went inside the doorway, and then the bullets were coming inside the doorway and hitting the wall inside the room. And we were like, well, fuck. So I think we were trying to talk to you, and we were yelling at you, and you were yelling back. Do you remember what we were saying? I don't remember. Like, I just remember, like, inarticulate, like, Bahaz, what? Bahaz, like, you know, like,
well, because I had got in and I was trying to talk to
yeah, and there was more arguing.
He was a little bit, not a little bit. He was very, very agitated. And,
yeah.
Well, you know, I don't really want to repeat it all on the recording, but you told me a story where you were running down that street and you said a mantra to yourself in order to run.
Yeah, I think that was right then, where we had me and Sora were like, okay, we're gonna go back to where the reporters and the other friends are, where the Quesade guys have fallen back to, and he was like, okay, I'm gonna go first, and then follow me. And just a few seconds later, like 6 seconds, and I was like, okay, and he ran, and bullets came after he ran, and I was like, okay, go, and I couldn't move, and I was like, man, I gotta run, I can't stay here. So I did like a little mantra in my head, and I was like, when I finish this mantra, I'm gonna run. And I finished, and then I took off, and I followed him. And I got there behind Soro, and he had gone out and run straight there. And I had run back and forth a few times, because I ran across, and bullets were coming, and I was like, woo. So then I like ran again to another cover, and then I zigzagged back and forth, because I think after they saw him run, they were gunning for me. So we got back there, and then shortly after, you made it back.
Well, I mean, that was the thing that interests me, because, I mean, I'd gotten back into the building, and then the same argument continued. I said, look, I tried to get him and the Enrique and the remaining Quesade guys to fall back, where we could try to return fire from a decent position, and then the argument started, and I said, okay, if you're not going to do that, let's fire back from here. And then a friend refused to do that, but that very impressive Quesade guy, Enrique, was he
just exposed himself to danger and
he went up.
started
He
shooting.
just grabbed. He just. I mean, he was. I was trying to say, "Come on, we got to fall back. You come back with me." And then he was shaking his head, and he looked a bit angry by it. And I said, "All right then. Then we got to fire back here." And I did the shooting motion with the rifle. He couldn't speak English. I couldn't speak Arabic, and he got that. And big brave guy, and he picked up the PK and went upstairs and started shooting. And I said to our friend, I said, "Okay, that's it. Now we've got to start as well." And we took up a firing position and started returning fire. And yeah, it wasn't effective enough to. In my opinion, he had not been firing back at that point. But in any case, I don't know what was happening back with you guys back at that Nocta, and I know the journalists were panicking,
and they were. It's funny because they were panicking, but they were also like recording and like trying to interview at the same time to deal with that.
And that was surreal for me because
Yeah.
I know I was back in that building for quite a while, and I'd run so low on ammo. I said to our friend, I said, "I've got to go back." I said, "I need more ammo. I'll get the other guys, and I'll come back with rockets and
yeah,
RPGs."
when we were trying to rally them to come, and as soon as we like step out into the alley, the sniper would shoot through.
And that was it. And I
we'd back
remember
up.
running back down that, yelling out to you guys. And I remember running down that street, and I could hear the rounds flying. And I thought, "Oh fuck, this is bad."
Yeah.
And then I got there, and then it seemed so surreal to me seeing simultaneously Sorrow trying to get weapons and
The rocket guy, we were like,
and
come with the rocket.
guy, bring the rockets, but he wouldn't bring the launcher, and I don't know if they were confused or they didn't have a launcher. And then these journalists doing this sort of interview thing simultaneously amongst us.
Like, what's going on?
And
yeah.
it seemed strange to me because I hadn't been there for that period.
They got one where I'm like standing in the stairwell looking out. There's like a mesh window where I could see the building that we had been in, and Carker was up on the 3rd floor, and he was like looking down and like looking around the sides of the building back and forth.
Yeah.
But he wasn't shooting from up there. And they were like, "What's going on right now?" And I was like, "Well, we had to fall back, running low on ammo, and he's still over there, and he won't leave and he won't come back. So I'm really worried about him. I don't know what's going to happen to him. You know, if he won't come back, you know, we got to go to him. And if we can't get to him, then he's going to be stuck there. So, you know, I wish he would just come back." And I was yelling like, "Carker, come back. You know, come fall back with us." And, you know, he couldn't hear me. And
That's when that airstrike hit.
yeah,
And that's when I really felt like things had... But that was confusing because something else hit behind the building.
yeah, the enemy was shooting rockets over and around him and us too.
But I'm not sure what that was.
Might
My
have been
feeling
mines.
now is it was actually an enemy mortar that had come over the building and it hit behind it.
Yeah,
But,
like we were still in danger.
well, I was thinking, I remember Sorrow saying, "Geez, maybe that was an airstrike." And then they've struck the building because it's just been taken by Cheddar. And we were confused. And I was sort of... I mean, at that time, we were sort of trying to get the rockets and the RPG launcher to go back, and then Sorrow said something like, "Okay, that's no longer safe to go back down there." And I found that kind of distressing.
Yeah.
And
Like it was grim, like we thought we might have already lost Carker. Like
yeah,
we
it
thought-
was that, and it was something had happened with the journalist Humvee hadn't turned up, and then we said, "Okay, let's go to that next Nocta to the west, so to the right of where we were." And then
Yeah, so we went back a few more buildings to that Nocta where the bend in the road was. And on the way there was when the journalists were like freezing between the buildings because we were still taking sniper
Yeah,
fire. And I was like, you know, like, think positive, you know, like, think about what you want to do when you get home in detail. Like, and that's your goal, that's your motivation, that's the finish line. Like, you know, don't think about the sniper. Just don't think about it, just run. You know, and the guy's like, you know, and then I think the Kesede guy ran ahead first and was like, come on, we need to go. And then, you know, we were like, if you run before me, it's less likely you'll get shot. So you journalists go first. And they ran first, and then we ran after them. And we were running, and at this point, like, I was totally gassed too, like exhausted, and like running slower because there were like just not enough fuel in the body to keep running fast. And but still, like, you know, sprinting as much as possible. And I still had the sniper rifle this time because Carker had still had my AK. and I was worried about running out of ammunition for the sniper rifle. We got back to the building. We were far enough back. The enemy wasn't advancing, and they had called for a truck to take the journalists away.
Yeah.
And then we finally got a hold of Zafar and Gabar on the phone. And I think they had come forward.
They were back actually at that point.
They had come back. Everything had settled down, and we talked to Zafar about getting more ammunition, rockets, machine guns, and men.
Can I ask your opinion on that? Because I had said, to be honest, didn't have faith. I mean, Sorrow's idea logically was, let's get a PK with a gunner, and we got to get some rockets. And the logic to that is really sound. But at that point, I was thinking that they were not going to give it to us because
it's a stretch, like that's just how the Quesada are.
Because that's just how it is, you know. And even, you know, and I said to Sorrow, look, I said, what do you reckon about me going back to the Nocta by myself? I said, I'll just run it. I'll run back there. And he said, no. And it was, to be honest, I just felt like, to not mention that commander's name, that he had said things to us in the past, promised us things and not given it to us.
Yeah.
Not given them to us. In any case, were you surprised when we didn't get what we asked for?
Not really, but I felt like, you know, we were
I
really...
felt like an idiot.
I felt like we were outgunned in that moment, and that we did need to, you know, re-up on all of our weapons and ammo, and especially because the Quesada guys had bailed out early in the fight, so we were like, okay, now we're stuck here. They've got us pinned down with rockets. We can't shoot rockets back, and, you know, where's the airstrikes? And they did eventually come, but like initially earlier in that day, we were saying, hey, we need airstrikes, we need help. And they came over the radio and they were like, oh no, you can handle it. Like, and I felt
But
like
that was a lot earlier in the day. And the problem afterwards, when we were under that really heavy attack, we had no radios and we had no translator.
Yeah, no battery. Like, yeah. And yeah, Gabar was gone, so we had no translator to communicate, so everything was fucked up. But, and that was the problem with trying to get guys to come back to the building with us, with rockets and more people and weapons and ammo, was that they didn't understand and they didn't want to go because they were scared, you know, and like we were scared, they were scared, but we were trying to move through it and they were just like, no.
I remember that, and I remember the guy trying to hand us 3 rockets and just going, well, what's the good of that? We've got no launcher.
And he didn't want to give up the launcher and he didn't want to come.
Do you think he either didn't understand or he...
There was that one skinny guy that wanted to come with us, like, and he was a tough guy. Like, he was like, yeah, you know, like, let's go. You know, and he came outside with us and he was ready to run down the alley. And then all the bullets came through the alley and we couldn't advance. But there was at least one or two local guys who was like willing to go with us. But yeah, so, I mean, you know, we're doing the best we could with what we had. And we asked Zafar and he said, yeah, go get more stuff over the phone.
Sorry, I mean, you just jogged a memory of mine, you know. The sort of, I remember, because I got back into the building and started returning fire and then got low on ammo and then said, look, I'm going to go back and get more ammo and bring the other guys back. And then there was a bunch of Quesada guys in that ground floor room at the back. And I started to move back to the position you and Sorrow were in, and they said to me, are we coming with you? And I said, no. And I felt guilty about that because I said, no, you wait here, I'm going to go get... they call all foreigners Americans. So I could only use sign language and say, I'm going to go and get the Americans and come back. And then, and I said, ammo, weapons. And then we couldn't get back, and it wasn't then, but it was days later. I thought, geez, that must have seemed horrible for them. That somebody was going to go and somebody had said to them, no, you don't fall back, you stay here where the danger is, and we'll come back with, you know, the guys who will come back with the weapons.
And it felt bad too, but
we didn't do that. And I know we couldn't do it, you know, because we couldn't get back down that road again. But it was in the days later, it was sort of nagging on my mind what must have been going through their mind, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. But they wouldn't advance either, so. And then we had, you know, the Vice News people kept like, you know, like, are you going to come with us? Like, you know, like, take us back to the back. And like, okay, but, you know, I don't really want to leave. And they didn't want us to leave them with the Quesada guys in case they got attacked on the way back. And So we took them back to the commander's office, and we were like, we need to go back with more weapons and ammo and reinforce this building. And they were like, oh, okay, yeah, but stay for tea.
That was something that bothered me, and I actually refused to go into the commander's office. I just didn't want to sit in there and talk all the bullshit, and Gabar was translating over the phone. But if he'd just said, no, you can't have them.
Yeah, we could just go back.
That would have just saved 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Not, okay, transport us back, okay, whatever.
He's playing Candy Crush on his phone and shit.
Yeah, instead of just saying, oh, yes, yes, and his manner when he was sort of saying, okay, here's a vehicle, Humvee, whatever it was, and they took us back, and yes, we're going to give you the machine gun, we're going to give you the RPGs, yes, and then at some point, 10 minutes later or something, you realise, okay, no, been lied to, we're not getting any of that.
And they gave us sugar and tea and food.
That bag, and that was the signal to me, when they handed that bag over, and I looked at it and I thought, oh, fuck, you're fobbing us off again, why can't you just be straight with us? This is not a social environment, this is a war zone.
Yeah.
Just fucking be honest.
Yeah, you don't have to make me feel
why
good.
Why are you wasting time? Yeah. Time matters here, and it really pissed me off, and it still pisses me off now, actually. And it's not a cultural thing. I don't think there is a cultural aspect to it, but it's cultural norms are put by the wayside in a battle zone. They have to be. So it still makes me angry, actually. But in any case,
well, that was the end of that day. It was, we went back to the building and we talked about it with Zafar and Gabar, and we went over everything, and then went to bed and took turns. And that night,
how did you feel that night?
That night I was shook up, like trying to sleep after having like intense battle. Every time I would hear like machine gun fire close by, I would shake. And I couldn't sleep at all, really. Eventually, I passed out, like, from exhaustion, and I got a few hours. But, and I would hear the airstrikes, and I would hear the gunship, the C-130 Spectre gunship, and that would make me feel comfort. Like, I would feel relieved, like, okay, good, the enemy's not going to sneak up on us, and I can go to sleep. And then I thought, like, well, if I can't sleep, I can just lay here and rest my eyes and rest my body. And I was, like, playing with my meditation beads and, like, doing mantras repetitively in my head, but every time I closed my eyes, I could, like, see all the events of the day. At one point, running back and forth from the buildings, I saw an AK on the ground, and I thought, that's probably a trap. It's probably a mine, and I shouldn't pick it up because it's probably an IED underneath that rifle. So I left it there, even though I only had the sniper rifle and I wanted it. And I remembered that when I was laying down that night. And I couldn't help but think I want to be like Enrique, like that big local guy. I want to be like a soldier like him as I